Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the ShockCast for January 29th, a Monday, a little bit late, for the Friday Omega Shock newsletter that was sent out on January 26, 2018. Title: The Big Lie and Big Liars. Lies kill. Most people don't understand that, but it's the truth. I've seen this truth with my own eyes, I've heard it with my own ears, and we have spent too long enjoying the lies that people tell. Too many have died, and many that haven't are walking casualties to the lies that people tell. I have friends who have suffered and died because of these lies, and I want them to stop. Of course they won't stop, because the lying liars benefit too much from the lies that they tell. The question is whether you will hold the lying liars accountable. If you do, it just might save your life. Andy Andrews wrote an interesting booklet, How Do You Kill 11 Million People? Subtitle, Why the Truth Matters More Than You Think. I provide a link in the article. It'll take you only half an hour to read it, and I've heard that it's worth the read. If you have a Kindle reader or Kindle app, it's only $1. But I can sum up the way that you can kill 11 million people in one short sentence. You lie to them. That's all you need to do. Of course, you need to be clever in your lies. There's even a science to the technique of lying, and for decades I've watched the practitioners of the big lie go about their business of blinding their victims in chains of darkness. And I have marveled at why so many people willingly submit to lies. Why do we do this? And yes, I include myself in this willingness to believe in lies. I'm not any different than you are. If by God's grace I have more skill or experience, which I doubt, it's not really all that much more than you. I count myself as being as vulnerable to lies as you. Therefore, I write this and speak this as much for myself as for you. And yes, I need to keep reminding myself that there are more lies out there than truth. I need to keep reminding myself that people speak lies with great fervor and passion, believing that they are true. I need to keep reminding myself that I had some rather negative views of Israel before I went to live in Israel in 1992. I was duped into believing that Israel was mistreating the Arabs. I was duped into believing that Israel was abusing the Palestinians. I was wrong, and I must never forget that, ever. Furthermore, just because someone believes a thing to be true, well, that doesn't mean that it is true. Look no further than the Muslims and their passion for death. They are willing, even desiring, to die for their false faith, a faith that is fairly easy to prove as false. Then there's Hitler, who rallied the Germans around his foul and evil banner and sent them off to murder 11 million Germans and Jews. Before he was done, 25 million Russians were dead, millions of dead Britons and Canadians, Americans, and French were strewn across the battlefields of Europe. Countless civilians were raped and murdered by Hitler's armies, and Japan would never have launched her war against the U.S. were it not the belief that the Americans could not afford a two-front war. In total, more than 80 million people died because one man could lie with conviction. Yes, Hitler had lots and lots of help. Goebbels was a master of propaganda, and American industrialists gave Hitler the money and resources that he needed. But they still needed a figurehead, someone who could lie with passion and conviction. Last week, as I was preparing to write this article, someone presented information that was such an example of heartless and soul-destroying corruption that I had to stop thinking about this piece and turn to something more important. Revealing a teacher of deception who stood among us. You can read what I wrote here. Special report, Rick Wiles, Deceiver. I wrote that with a heavy heart, as I always do when someone professes Christ while teaching damnable heresy. Even worse, there was a time when I considered him to be a brother in Christ. I thought well of Rick. Once upon a time I could not allow feelings to Excuse me. I thought well of Rick once upon a time, but I could not allow feelings to stand in the way of truth and duty. And I find that far too many have allowed deception to flourish because of the feelings that they had for the deceiver. What is wrong with Christians today? Why are they so willing to believe the lies? It starts with the pastors, but even they aren't the root cause. When you look past the pastors, you see the seminaries. Ah, yes, the seminaries. I call them cemeteries because that is where you go to die. And yes, I really mean that. Death lives in the cemeteries. Seminaries. And we keep sending our bright young children there to learn what? The Bible? You go to a seminary to learn the Bible? Why do you need to go to a seminary to learn the Bible? I can tell you that you do not need to go to a seminary to learn the Bible. You don't even need to go to a seminary to learn how to manage people. You don't need a seminary to learn how to do evangelism. You don't need a seminary to learn history, geography, or anything else. What do you need a seminary for? You need a seminary to act as a central repository of lies and disinformation. If you don't believe me, then I would need to wonder at your ability to see the obvious corruption within our churches. The same goes for our secular universities, many of which started out as seminaries. All the Ivy League schools were seminaries, and I spent more than 5 years at a university that taught lies from morning to night, and once was a seminary. Go Bulldogs. I want to get some personal experiences. I want to get to them first, but first I need to ask you some questions. Why are our societies collapsing around us? Why have our morals fallen so quickly? Why do we believe things that are obvious lies? Ultimately, because we want to. Yes, that's right. We enjoy the lies we believe. We revel in them, especially the lies that tell us how wonderful and good we are. Sorry, kids, but we are all despicable, disgusting, and deceptive. We are ignorant and dumber than a box of rocks and a bag of hammers. If you need an explanation, just read your history book. Any accurate history book is written proof that we are all stupid and in love with our own sense of greatness. Take the current toxic mix of mainstream journalism and the Democrat Party. Do you see any proof that Trump has been collaborating with Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin? No? Neither do I. So why do we persist in this charade? Why does the mainstream media talk and talk and talk and talk some more about this utterly ridiculous Russian collusion dossier? It's simple, really. If they stop talking about this dossier, then they will need to look in the mirror and call themselves cheap prostitutes. They will need to tell themselves that they have been living and continue to live a lie. And they can't do that. Let me give you some personal examples. I provide a link. The title of this rather infuriating article is called "Back into the Closet: Why U.S. Reporters Are Not Allowed to Write About Rainbow Events in Nations Where Being Gay is Still Condemned." Naturalnews.com. I'm sorry. Mike Adams, you are a lying liar. My wife and I were only a few miles away from an event that was a big fire that happened. It was called some sort of color event where a bunch of young people were getting together, and the event organizers made the mistake of coloring cornstarch, which burned in the hot lamps. And we even knew someone doing triage after the fire. My wife, a native speaker of Mandarin, knew all about this fire. The Taiwanese reached out to Mike Adams to tell him the truth. That it had nothing to do with any color event for any homosexual or gay pride thing. Nothing. But Mike wasn't interested in the truth. Mike is a dirtbag. Like all the other dirtbags in the mainstream media, even though he is, quote-unquote, alternative media. He's no better than any of them. He has slandered a country that I care a lot about, Taiwan. He should be ashamed of himself, but he isn't. He's making too much money. Mike Adams does not love the truth in any way. As I have told you, I lived in Israel for 15 years. You are probably sick of hearing me say that, but it was a useful experience that showed me the dark underbelly of the mainstream media. Countless times I would see one thing for myself and something completely different from U.S. and international news services. It was as if there were two different realities inhabiting the same space. Why were they doing this? Because the truth isn't as interesting as the lies. I've met a lot of journalists in Jerusalem, lots and lots of them. There are even a couple of them that I count as friends. One even reads this newsletter from time to time. And the one thing that I've heard from almost all of them is that Jerusalem is a gigantic stepping stone for the last big posting in a journalist's career, Washington, D.C. All the big names need to get posted to Jerusalem before the real plum assignment. If you don't make it to Jerusalem, you don't make it to Washington. And you don't make it into the big leagues if you haven't done your time in Jerusalem. And you will never make it to Washington, D.C. if you tell the truth about Israel. If you don't trash Israel at every opportunity, you will not succeed in your career. If you are an ambitious journalist, you can't love Israel. Why is that? First of all, the truth is boring, and you can't sell news if you keep telling the truth too much. You also need to think hard to make all the facts fit together, so it's a lot of work. Have you noticed that journalists love to interview Palestinian women who cry over the abuse that they claim to have received from the Israeli government? Right. Crying women sell newspapers. Talking about how they did it to themselves, that it is the Palestinian government that is responsible, that doesn't sell newspapers. You'll also notice that journalists don't speak Arabic. If they did, they'd hear what the Palestinians tell each other. The Palestinians think that we are idiots who will fall for any sob story. Unfortunately, we keep proving them right. Maybe we should stop. But there's something else that's a little harder to quantify. It's about the soul of the average journalist. And it's about that sense of wanting to change the world for their team. Most don't think in terms of words like their team, but some do. Most have this utopian idea of some warm, fuzzy, better, best world, that dream of a perfect world is being blocked by ugly people like Israelis and the Christians. And yes, that really is how they think. Remember that journalism students go to journalism school to change the world and to make it a better place. They do not go to journalism school to learn how to tell the truth. You will not hear that from either a journalism professor or a journalism student, although some will give lip service to some ideal-like truth. The truth is an unacceptable idea. Truth is fraught with uncomfortable ideas about how awful we all are. Truth reveals that we are all selfish, arrogant, uncaring barbarians. Truth reveals that we are all dishonest, that we are all greedy, that we will step on each other to get what we want. Oh, and the truth is a lot of work, while lies come easy. There's also something else to think about, and it ties in with my antipathy towards seminaries. Students are dazzled by their professors. If you graduated from university before the age of 25, you probably have a favorite professor that you recall with great fondness. I have two, and they both consider me to be a dreadful mistake and a waste of their time, but that's just me. Anyway, people are very malleable until they reach the age of 25. After that, their brains stop changing so rapidly. For instance, learning a second language before the age of 25 is far easier than if you try to do so after 25. And there's something even more important. Before the age of 25, the ideas and opinions of other people mean more to you than afterwards. After 25, you are less swayed into doing some of the crazy stuff that you might have done when you were in college. Other people have less influence on you after the age of 25. That's why the Army wants you to enlist at age 18 or join the ROTC when you get to college. That's why my first university didn't like the fact that I still lived with my parents while attending college. It's why I didn't start to shake free of some of the heresy that I was brought up to believe until after I was 25, and also after God started hammering on me. And God is still hammering on me. Let's turn back to Hitler. He is given credit for creating the idea of the big lie from his book Mein Kampf. Here's the relevant quote from Herr Schicklgruber's work, the other name for Hitler. All this was inspired by the principle which is quite true within itself, that in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility, because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus in the primitive simplicity of their minds they more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. It would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds, they will still doubt and waver, and will continue to think that there may be some other explanation, for the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it, even after it has been nailed down, a fact which is known to all expert liars in this world and to all who conspire together in the art of lying. Der Schwein Schicklgruber, a.k.a. Adolf Hitler. Ja, Hitler war ein Schwein, jawohl. Learn your German. It might help. However, that pig, Schwein, Adolf Hitler, did not write Mein Kampf, or Mein Struggle, or, sorry, My Struggle, in German. The person who wrote it was this guy. I show a picture of him. His name is Bernhard Stimpfel. That certainly doesn't look like Adolf Dirtbag Hitler. And the name doesn't sound all that familiar either, because Hitler didn't want the real Mein Kampf to become known. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. That's because Hitler didn't want the real writer of Mein Kampf to become known. Have you ever wondered how Hitler could write that book while he was in prison? Well, I often did, and I only found out who really wrote Mein Kampf just a few years ago. The next question is, who is this Bernhard guy? Well, Bernie was a Catholic priest, a Hieronymite priest, whatever that is. Although he didn't look all that Hieronymite to me. There's something about vows of eternal poverty. He didn't look impoverished. Whatever the case, it was a Catholic priest who first penned the idea of the big lie. And that makes sense. The Roman Catholic Church has been telling some real whoppers for more than 1,000 years. And they should know all about something like this. The big lie about the Roman Catholic Church, or the RCC, is that for 1,000 years the only Christians in Europe were RCC Christians. And the RCC, I'm sorry, is not Christian. The problem is that we have evidence that there were lots of Christians that weren't RCC, and I am a walking, talking, breathing bit of evidence. The church that I was baptized into can trace its line all the way back to the disciples and John the Baptist. I no longer believe that that kind of genealogy is important, but I can say that I am not a Protestant, if that's a valuable thing. The Lutherans, Anglicans, Presbyterians, and Methodists are all Protestants and come from the Catholic Church. The original Baptists are not, and never have been, Protestants. But the RCC, the Roman Catholic Church, would have you believe that this is all wrong. The RCC wants you to believe that no other forms of Christianity existed outside of the RCC. And they tried to make that the truth. And they tried to make that the truth by killing as many Christians as they could during their 1,000-year reign of terror. It's funny how trying to kill off Christians never works. However, this big lie is so big that it's hard to get rid of it. The RCC has more money than we Baptist types, so we continue to have this lie exist. By the way, could someone please tell Anne Barnhart that it's okay to climb down off of her Roman Catholic Church perch? I like Anne, but she has this mistaken idea that only the Roman Catholic Church has authority. There really are churches that have true, descended from John the Baptist and the disciples, authority. And she can go to them and actually get baptized instead of sprinkled, which is not baptism. Okay, let's see the next one. Ah, yes. We've had some big lies in American history, but there is one that seems to sit right at the top of all of them. It's bigger than the JFK assassination. It's bigger than the explosion of the USS Maine. It's even bigger than that foolish lie that the founding fathers of the United States were Christian. It's bigger than the Bay of Pigs. It's bigger even than the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was a false flag, that set off the Vietnam War. Did you notice that JFK had to be assassinated before America could enter the Vietnam War in the way that it did? Oh, you noticed that. Oh, good. No, the biggest of all the big lies was 9/11. It's bigger than the Reichstag fire that brought Hitler to power, although it was really similar. It was bigger than that pitiful excuse for invading Iraq. Why? Because the explanation that the government gives for how the World Trade Center buildings fell is impossible. I don't care how you slice this. I don't care what explanation that you give. There is no way for World Trade Center 1, World Trade Center 2, and World Trade Center 7 to fall the way that they fell, for the reasons that they give for how it fell. There is no physical way. None. Zip. Zero. For buildings 1 and 2, jet fuel, kerosene, does not burn hot enough to melt steel. Ever. And the smoke pouring out of World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2 was black. That means that the temperature was too low to melt steel. Furthermore, even if the steel at that high a level had melted in the way that they said that it melted, for those buildings to fall at free fall speed right on top of their footprint, well, as I write in the article, none of that is impossible. Oh, I'm sorry. None of that is possible. 4 exclamation points and all caps. That's right. Not possible. Or should I say that it's only possible if there was a controlled demolition. But this is where the concept of the big lie comes in. Just as with the Reichstag fire, a lie that big is believed because people cannot conceive of anyone lying that big. The fall of World Trade Center Building 7 is even less possible. In that case, the building fell at free fall speed, just like a controlled demolition, because of burning furniture and carpet. Burning furniture, burning carpet, could bring down a building at free fall speed, just like a controlled demolition? Really? Come on. Come on. They really must think that we're stupid. They really must, because there's no other way to explain why they would try to pass this off on us. The problem is that they are probably right. We really are that stupid because we really did buy this big lie. then we took this big lie and killed a lot of people with it. I was in Israel at the time working on a computer manual when it happened. I remember where I was. I remember who told me that the plane or a plane had hit the World Trade Center. I remember watching live as the second plane hit. And no, Israel didn't do it either. Mossad and the CIA have never worked together very well. Never. Only on an ad hoc basis have they ever cooperated well. Only then in Central and South America. Who benefited from this big lie? The CIA. Oh, and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Arabs. And you probably didn't know that the Saudi intelligence and the CIA have worked well together for a very, very long time, pretty much since the 1950s. My hope is that this puts into perspective the current situation vis-a-vis Donald Trump. The amount of corruption and lying, that is lying, just underneath the surface is horrendous, and it threatens to break open everything. And I would hope that this includes 9/11. Now, there is an interesting movie that I recommend everyone to see at least once. It is called JFK to 9/11, Everything is a Rich Man's Trick. And I noticed that when I checked on that video, that YouTube had put it under restriction. And I'm betting that they will take it down, except there's a little problem. It's really popular. People are watching in the millions. Now, the most important part of the movie is the first hour. The rest is also important. The JFK assassination and 9/11 is also important, but the first hour, I have family, great uncles and even great aunts who fought in World War II. Some came back damaged because of the dirtbags, American dirtbags, that helped put Hitler in power. We Americans, and if you're an American, that includes you, our great-grandfathers, the industrialists, those who made the products that we bought, we put that dirtbag, that Adolf Hitler, in power. We did this. It was us. And if you want to look at who's really responsible, well, we always say in counterterrorism, follow the money. Well, guess where Hitler got his money? But let me continue. YouTube is trying to stop this movie from getting out, but they're having some trouble because too many people know about it. But YouTube is run by dirtbags and staffed by dirtbags, and dirtbags will be dirtbags. If you have trouble watching this video, go to the website, everythingisarichmanstrick.webs.com. That's the website for the documentary, and there are a lot of interesting videos at the bottom of that page. By the way, I profiled that video here. It's titled Oil Destroyed Us, from May 20th, 2016. There is more information and a couple more videos that you should see if you can. I cannot stress enough how important all of this is. With all of that deceit, with all of the lies that have caused hundreds of millions of people to be murdered, there are even bigger lies. I essentially profiled one of them last week. About Rick Wiles. No, Rick isn't the big lie, but what he believes is a part of one group of big lies. Most post-tribbers are preterists, and your soul is truly in danger should you believe such a horrendous lie. Preterism is a very Catholic and Protestant idea, and it is something that no Christian should ever follow, ever. God said that he would erase from the book of life the name of anyone who takes away from the book of Revelation. That is what Rick Wiles has done. That is what preterism does. If you need an explanation of preterism, go here, www.godwills.com. gotquestions.org, preterist, preterist.html. If you need to know what I am talking about in my mention of Rick Wiles, go here. Special report, Rick Wiles, Deceiver. I hated to write that, but I had no choice. The heresy was too great. Unfortunately, there is one more big lie that I need to mention. It also comes from the Jesuits, who are the authors of so many big lies. It comes from my book, Ezekiel's Fire, Section 1, A Theory That Blinds. When I first came into contact with the idea of the pre-tribulation rapture, I was shocked. When I asked someone to explain it to me, I was shocked again. And I keep getting shocked. I keep getting shocked when I ask someone to prove that their belief in a pre-tribulation rapture is true. I have yet to see anyone give me a verse that even describes a pre-tribulation rapture. Please don't get me wrong. There are worse things to believe. But to believe in something that the Bible does not describe is shocking to me. It also blinds you to the warnings that I've been giving you for 7 years. Belief in a pre-tribulation rapture will put you to sleep right at the time when you need to be the most awake. Please, stop this foolishness. Stop the Jesuit big lie. Stop. Stop believing in something that does not exist in the Bible. And please, read your Bible. Now, I wrote this on Thursday, as I try to write all of my articles, to make sure that Mrs. Little and I get out the door on time to reach and teach our Bible class on Friday nights. So this is I add an additional private note about something that pertains to the above, something that I had read just an hour before. It's from Matthew 18, verse 4. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus wasn't talking about the start of your faith in Christ. He wasn't talking about how you begin, but about how you live, about how you read the Bible. We are beset by big lies, both inside and outside our churches. It's time to have a childlike approach to the Bible, and that means accepting what it says as being true. And if it does not specifically say something, then you cannot specifically say that it is true. And a childlike faith would never, ever twist the words of the one that he or she loves. It is past time to humble ourselves before God and accept what he says, as he said it. And we need to stop listening to those who tell us big lies. Now, as I recommend that all and everyone do, please read my book, Ezekiel's Fire, ezekielsfire.com. No apostrophes, no blanks, no nothing. ezekielsfire.com. You can get it, and you can download it in PDF. I have links there. And you can also get it in other ebook formats. If you have trouble with it, let me know. And also, and I provide a link in the article, and it is, the title of the link is it's a YouTube video. It's called The Gospel, Romans 1, verses 1 to 7. And it's an excellent example of an Israeli pastor, our pastor in Jerusalem, giving a message about the gospel in Hebrew. I desperately wish that I was back there in that congregation. I envy each and every one of those in that congregation, and I recognize some of those that were sitting there. The pastor is Menno Kalisher, the little guy speaking Hebrew. The translator is Tuvia. However, please note that his English and Hebrew are Tuvia's second and third languages. Also, for those who are trying to follow the Hebrew, the translation isn't word for word. Tuvi is translating the idea, not the exact words. And Menno is so Israeli. In fact, he's even more Israeli than most Israelis, at least when he's preaching. Unfortunately, you will hear that the NAR, the New Apostolic Reformation, has penetrated the Christian community in Israel. I'm betting that you know which churches have... I'm betting that I know which churches have taken up this heresy. I used to know some of the people who went to that church and to churches like it. Also, you will hear proof that the high schools in Israel are responding to their Christian students. They're asking questions. Pray for the Israeli Christians. They are true pioneers in Israeli society, and as they grow in number, they will begin to suffer pushback from the ultra-Orthodox rabbis. It is expected. It is a sign of victory, but it will also be a time of difficulty. I have a few more articles in here, and I praise Trump for addressing, or planning to address, the first president ever to address personally, in person, an anti-abortion rally. Now that is awesome, and I said so. I talk about the brazen plot to frame Trump and to exonerate Hillary Clinton. Lots of brazenness. And also I guess you might say, the strange new pathologies of the world's first rich and failed state. Well, I will leave you to peruse the article that I wrote on Thursday and then present it on Friday. My hope is that all of you had a good weekend. I'm sorry that I had to post this on Monday. I wrestled with my video software all Saturday. I finally was successful because, after all, you can see what I'm saying. You can see me talking here. Otherwise, I would not have been successful. Hopefully next week I'll be able to get the video out at the same time that I get the article out on Friday. Until then, have a great week.